right, guys. So, thank you guys for sticking around. I appreciate it. So first off, we have talked about recycling quite a few times. I think that's probably one of the hottest topics in society, especially education. It's also definitely one of the most overdone PDs, I think. We can all attest to that. I think we did a little bit with recycling at the beginning. So one of the things that I like to talk about with this is the fact that recycling can apply to schools a little bit more than it would the rest of society per se. So what has been happening over the past several decades, we've obviously been pushing for more recyclables across society due to the environmental state that we've been dealing with over the past 20 years or so. That said, a big issue with recycling is the fact that recycling is at its core a business. So the fact is that they still have to make money, and that's what prevents a lot of programs from starting up recycling programs to begin with. So in that sense, Miami-Dade's recycling coordinator actually is quoted as saying is precisely what I just mentioned, that recycling is a business, and that we in Miami-Dade have a particular issue because we have 3 primary providers, and they are all private companies ever since the early 90s. So it kind of throws things in a little bit of a strange process that a lot of counties don't have to deal with. One prime example, and Gigi can attest to this, the recycling in Coral Gables is ridiculous. I've actually lived in the same house, so she can definitely tell you that there's a crew of people that literally run up and grab their little bag out of the recycle bin, and they have to check to make sure that there are not contaminants in there. And what that means is, and this was news to me, I've been contaminating recycling for the past 10 years and I had no idea. Pizza boxes are not recyclable because there's grease on it.
Yes.
I didn't know that. I don't know about you guys, but that was a piece of information that was basically, it was very interesting to me. So that's one of the prominent issues in society is the fact that they've termed it even, interestingly, wish cycling. We want to think that things are recyclable because it makes us feel better. At the end of the day, we're not contributing to a giant landfill, we're sending it to the recycling dump. That is a huge issue because Miami-Dade County has 18% recycling rate right now, which, comparatively speaking, I'll give you numbers for Broward. Broward is 33, Palm Beach is 45. So we're significantly lower, obviously. And the way that the state of Florida calculates recycling rates is based off of the total amount of waste. So in the sense that we have 18% as Miami-Dade County, there's actually 82% going to the dump. So that's a great disparity there. Primary piece of advice is, when in doubt, throw it out. So because people have these confusions and these issues with the recycling process, it's important for us to kind of inform students in a way that it puts it in a simple manner. So because of that, clean and dry cardboard items, glass, plastic, paper, basically the normal things that you can think about are recyclables, right? From there are a couple different things that I thought were interesting in terms of what we can do to help out in education. There's a couple different examples, obviously. One of them is a little bit strange. It's called vermicomposting, which I think Mr. Santino actually knows about, is where there are worms in basically a pit of soil and you throw your food waste into it and we don't have trash. So we're feeding worms and we could be using that as compost, basically. The other aspects of that are very important to prevent contamination are the facts that if we label the receptacles appropriately, that tends to decrease contamination significantly, obviously, because people do read the labels, especially with visuals. So Recycle Across America actually has a grant for schools that you can apply for, and they give you the labels, which is kind of nice. Amongst other things they'll give you, obviously, if you apply to certain aspects of that. From there are also a couple, obviously, we talk about reduce, reuse, and recycle all the time. That's one of the most common 3 R's, other than respect, responsibility, resourcefulness, or reading, writing, arithmetic. There's another 3 R's. So in the classroom, you can also do things to help implement reduction, and reusing and things like that. So in reducing things, we can be saving money for ourselves by reducing the amount of material that we actually use, project things on the board, flip the papers over, use the backside. If, maybe somebody did work on this side, start a paper pile for scratch notes. All of a sudden your kids can take notes on the back of a paper and we're saving an entire pack. That would have a major impact, obviously, on schools if we, across the nation, could get that to go in the right way. It would be dramatic. there are, in terms of social awareness, that also obviously draws a major positive from an educational perspective. It's a very positive image enhancement in the sense if you establish a recycling program, I guess would be a way to put it, you're drawing very positive attention towards yourselves. One of the most interesting things that I delved into actually was a California case study, and the state of California did a little bit of an analysis in terms of their waste composition, and schools make up 2% of the total waste stream in the state of California, which doesn't sound like that much off the base of things, but when you realize that there are 12,000 schools and there are several hundred million people in California, it doesn't really work out that well. Approximately 80% of the waste that school produces is recyclable, 40 to 50% being paper. So that's crazy. To not be able to recycle over 50% of your waste, I mean upwards to 4/5 of it, it's a lot of material that we're throwing in the trash. There's a particular example that was in that case study that I want to talk about. It's called Oak Grove Elementary School, and it's in Sonoma County, California. So yes, it may be a different socioeconomic background than what we're used to, but their numbers I was looking at are very similar to the number of people that we have. From there, their program was actually started by one individual, which was their lead custodian, and he had a passion for the environment and instilled that into the staff and the students as well, actually, and began a recycling program from nothing at their school. They actually had nothing to begin with, and they were producing 32 cubic yards of waste per month. Once he started this recycling program, 32 cubic yards went to 4 cubic yards. I mean, and for those of you who can picture that, obviously, those numbers, that's like 32 cubic yards, we could say would be this entire space from the bottom here. So you're reducing that by 800%, which is ridiculous. Okay, so it started when with the custodian actually going through trash bins and removing things manually, which is a bit tedious, obviously. And then it evolved once he gained some support from the staff and students as well. Their current program is now set up where they even distribute unserved cafeteria food, which I thought was really interesting. There's obviously a migrant worker population out in California as well as a homeless population that they can definitely be served very well with that. Drink cartons, that was a huge one to me. They actually have a particular program with their juice and milk cartons that they go straight to a firm that essentially makes repurposed furniture and other materials, I suppose, but out of milk cartons, which is kind of interesting. Obviously, just off the surface of things, the milk and juice cartons are all recyclable. If you think about it, we have breakfast, lunch, and after school. That's a lot of recyclable material alone. Yard trimmings, obviously, that could factor in as well. You can use those for compost, things like that. The most creative thing that I thought I actually came across was the community drop-off program. They came up with something where they allowed parents as well as community members to come through the community and come to the school, and drop off any material that they could redeem for funds. So some of you guys may have noticed before, obviously, you've probably seen the little 5 cents or 25 cents thing on the bottom of a bottle or a can. Those are bottle deposits most of the time. So what you're doing basically when you buy a bottle of soda, you're paying an extra 10 cents or so for that plastic bottle, and you can redeem it for cash. Some people run around and collect that, obviously. They actually brought in $500 last year from that program, which I thought was actually pretty significant when you think about it. They managed to save $1,400 that year, and that was all based off of 12 to 15 hours of student labor each week, which that's pretty minimal when you think about it. They have a recycling club, so it allows them to do things after school a little bit, which is nice. So in collecting all these recyclables from anyone in the community though, they are bringing in more money by doing that. So it's helping the environment and it's helping their school. In that sense, there's actually another program too that they do with this community drop-off, and it has to do with plastic bags. So that's one of the biggest things in the news now, especially, is the fact that people love to go grocery shopping, and when they ask you paper or plastic, most of us don't have those little reusable bags that we can say, oh, neither, I have this. So what they started to do, and you may get a kick out of this, They had a plan with Albertsons. I have no idea how they're still in Albertsons in California, but so they have a plan with Albertsons there where they collect all their plastic grocery bags and send them back to Albertsons headquarters in that state, and then they reuse these and turn them into plastic bags again. So not a bad process there. Sort of prevents a little bit of waste going into the atmosphere. Another thing that's actually really important there with the community drop-off aspect of things is developing community partnerships. By creating a recycling program, it's a very, very easy way to get into community businesses and local businesses around you. It's starting a positive initiative that you can both link into, which is always a great thing. From there, all right, so the community program, I already spoke about that for a little bit. They brought in $500. The garbage costs at the school have been decreased by $1,400 a year, which is a lot of money. Because waste actually costs more to dispose of than recycling does, which makes sense because they sell the recyclables after. You're saving money by diverting materials into your recyclables. So the startup costs they tend to be offset pretty quickly in that sense. So some of the things that you must stay in touch with in order to be successful here are the fact that you need to start by evaluating the waste stream at the school, which is kind of the tedious part where the custodian in our example was going through and taking things out by hand. It's important to do that so that you can center in on what materials are being wasted at our school. Establishing the creative partnerships, like I just mentioned, to coordinate with the custodial and kitchen staff is very important because they can help you audit the waste as well as make improvements and offer suggestions in terms of perhaps more eco-friendly materials. Outside of that, it's important to implement the process in phases in order to allow for modifications. That's actually a really important part. A lot of people, when they establish this recyclable program, they tend to go full on, and that's what leads to that wish cycling issue that I spoke about at the beginning. So in order to avoid that, by taking the time monitoring the progress and tracking the data, it allows you to, kind of what we talked about with school when you think about it, it allows you to sort of hone in on specific areas that you can focus on, as opposed to looking at a big picture and perhaps making some unintentional mistakes like recycling pizza boxes. So, outside of that, guys, that's really pretty much all I have to give you in terms of the recycling aspect of things. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or remarks? The students, perfect. So the students I would involve, a great way to do that, there were several suggestions, but the primary one that I would stick to would be the fact that the students would be using, I kind of mentioned it in terms of the 12 to 15 hours a week that they would be putting in. They would have to use a little bit of either club time, if we were to establish an extracurricular, or extra class time, to be able to go around and collect the recyclables, analyze the waste, especially towards the beginning when you're looking through the composition, and to promote it, obviously. The best way to do that, if you have a central collection area, you're able to put up a bulletin board, put the data tracker up there, put images, obviously, anything multimedia-wise is great. Things to stimulate people's attention and awareness towards the issue, basically. So, in doing so, great, most effective, probably, approach to that.
So, I'm wondering, do you know if there are any programs here in Miami, in the area, that would be willing to partner up with the school?
Good question. I actually have, wherever it is on my stuff, I have the recycling coordinator's information for the county, so I plan on giving her a call.
Okay.
So hopefully the county.
We could start off with something small. My daughter's school, they recycle markers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Kids and teachers, we go through a lot of dry erase markers or just markers with their coloring and art. They just collect them, recycle, and send them off. I have to get the information where they send them off, so they make them into new markers again.
Yeah, that's another huge thing. I'm so happy you just said that. The reuse of things, they actually have, there's actually a corporation out in California, a company that specifically does that with educational materials and then resells them to, you must be a teacher in the state of California and have your licensure in order to buy it. So it's kind of interesting because they're saving pretty good penny there. I noticed they said they were saving several $100 a year